online. Okay, awesome. Hello. Hello to everyone that's on the Twitch stream right now. Thank you so much for bearing with the technical difficulties. To everyone in the room, sometimes I'm going to be talking at my computer. Sorry if that's weird. We don't have a better way to do this. Yep. Awesome. Okay. Is it still a black screen? Sorry? It's working now? Okay, awesome. Let me... Okay. Can you see my face? Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. But yeah, thank you everyone for bearing with us. Welcome everybody to the very first lecture for Figma Decal Fall 2021. Yes. Thank you. We've been so excited for this. We've been wanting to do this forever since we started it. You might know that we started the decal during the spring. So this is actually our first in-person lecture ever. And to those of you on Twitch, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for bearing with all of the technical difficulties. But without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So week one, it is a welcome day to Figma Decal. We'll be going through an introduction. Really quiet. I don't know if I have a way to fix that. I will check. I'm going to talk a little bit more. Tiffany, let me know if the audio is doing okay. One of our TAs is live troubleshooting the stream with us right now too. It's okay? All right. Sorry about that if the audio is really quiet. I'll turn it up a little bit more. This is probably the best we can do for now. We'll troubleshoot for next week. But awesome. So today's introduction is going to start with staff introductions. For those of you watching on stream, they'll probably just be yelling from afar, but we'll be doing a quick intro of who everyone is, and then we'll do a course overview, talk through a little bit of our syllabus. We'll be going through basic tools, and talking about what exactly it is that we say design. So first of all, we have an attendance form for each of our lectures. You can go ahead and pull this up at the beginning if you want. The attendance form is going to ask you a couple of basic questions about the lecture content just to make sure that you're absorbing it. The key is yellkey.com/rich. So if you go to that website, you'll see the attendance form. Your name should show up on that attendance form in the drop-down link if you are enrolled. If you are not an enrolled student at UC Berkeley, you do not have to do this attendance form. In fact, you can't because your name won't be on the form. If your name is not on the form, hold up tight. We'll get one of the TAs to add you to our database and just let us know later in the lecture. We'll be sending this again at the end of the lecture as well. Hit some thumbs up if that's working for you, if you're on the form. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, we'll go ahead and start with our staff introductions. These are the people that are going to be learning with you this fall. Clearly, I didn't update the copy. But my name is Ace. I'm behind all of the emails that you're getting right now, but soon someone else will be behind those emails. I'm a third year at UC Berkeley. I'm studying computer science, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm the lead instructor of this course. Next is Elizabeth. If you want to turn your attention to that wall over there where all the TAs are sitting. Allison is unfortunately not going to be able to join us in person today. She is watching on the stream. I don't know if she's typing anything in the stream right now, but Allison is a fourth year who uses she, her pronouns and is a TA and took this class last semester. sorry about that pronoun error for Ninseke. He does use he, him. That was a leftover legacy edit from last year. Sorry about that. And Adam, who is not here right now, is our design specialist. He is a faculty advisor who uses he, they pronouns, and he basically helps advise our course. So a quick course overview. What are we going to be learning this semester? The who, what, when, where, why of this class. We'll be going through the syllabus and generally talking about what you can expect. So the first objective of this course, of which we have 3 main objectives, is to become comfortable using Figma to pursue your ideas. So this doesn't mean that we want you to learn every single shortcut. It doesn't mean you have to know every single possible trick there is with Figma, because nobody knows all of them. But rather, this means that we want you to personally leverage Figma as a tool for anything that you want to do, no matter what that is. If you came to info session, you know our spiel about this. But we basically want you to utilize Figma in a way that fits you, that is tailored to you. So we're going to give you those skills and have you apply them in ways that you find interesting, that you find inspirational to you. The second objective is to create a community and improve collaboration skills. So those hard skills that you use when you're learning Figma are most important when you're working in teams and you work with other people. Design really, at the end of the day, is about working with other people. So learning those soft skills to help you navigate virtual team environments, in-person team environments, what kind of situations that you're in, is a really key part of this course that you're going to see throughout a lot of the work that we do and a lot of the interactions that we have with other students. And finally, the third primary objective is to develop a sense of design with a critical lens. So this means being able to give and receive critique. Critique is a really huge part of design that can feel a little bit uncomfortable to navigate. It's hard to show your work to somebody. It's hard to hear them say things about your work. So we really want to drive home the ability to give and receive that feedback and be able to maintain confidence in the work that you make regardless. The work that you put out has a lot of value. The work that you put out is important. And it's important to be able to hear how people feel about it, hear the important feedback that people have, especially the people that you are designing with and designing for. At a glance, this semester is basically 12 weeks. We're already into the 3rd week of school for standard classes, and this is a 2-unit course, as you hopefully know if you've enrolled. This spans from today, September 7th, until November 30th. We're going to pause for fall break from November 21st to 27th, which is after week 11. So during this time, there's not going to be any extra homework, not going to be a lab. You'll basically have an extra time to work on your project or to relax, whatever works for you. This week is week 1, and we do number the weeks, so we're kind of associating all of the concepts and the content with each week, so keep that in mind as you go. Each week basically has 2 days of class meetings. Today, on Tuesdays, is lecture, and labs are going to be every Thursday. Scattered throughout the week on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, we're going to have office hours that are completely optional, but highly, highly encouraged. So weeks 1 through 6 are going to cover the basic tools of Figma and FigJam, and basically fundamental design theory. So through weeks 1 through 6, you're going to be able to pick up enough skills to start working on a project that you're personally caring about. So that midterm project is going to be pretty open-ended. You're going to be able to do something that you care about and really practice those skills together at the same time. The way that we usually structure homeworks and labs is to practice individual skills. So we want you to be able to put those in tandem with each other. So by the middle of the week, you're going to be able to do that. Yes?
Also, weeks 1 through 6 is so boring. Last time I took the course, I kind of not getting all the way. All right, we get to like 7 and 8 and beyond. You're using the basic stuff that you learned in week 1 through 6, and you haven't mastered that. It's going to be extremely difficult, going back and forth. So, really, personal experience, make sure you really pay attention to weeks 1 through 6, but it sets the foundation for everything.
Yeah, totally. Just to reiterate what Inseke said, weeks 1 through 6 are going to be the basic tools, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be, super, super easy content. It's going to take a little bit of time to pick everything up, and it's really important to have those strong fundamentals down because we're going to continue to use that forever. The stuff that you use today is going to be stuff that you use every day that you're using Figma. So make sure to keep up with the content, hopefully, but we know you have busy lives. Weeks 7 through 9, which is kind of the 3rd quarter of the class, are going to cover 3 more advanced skills, a little bit more in depth. So we're going to be talking about advanced, quote unquote, prototyping, illustration, and auto layout. So these are 3 kind of skills that are really critical to being, a designer, but they are kind of varied in the use cases that they have. Not everybody's going to be super excited about every single one of those skills, so we have them as separate weeks that you have to learn throughout the course of the kind of second half of that class. We're also going to be introducing the final project, which you have the last quarter of the class to work on. So weeks 10 through 12 are a little bit less intense content. We're going to talk about fun things, miscellaneous things like how to make a birthday card in Figma, how to make games in Figma, doing things that are just more fun. And we're also going to talk about things like design careers, how to apply those skills that you've picked up in the future once you're out of this classroom. During this time, again, you're going to be working on and then finally presenting your final project, which, as you might have heard, is completely open-ended. We put very small restrictions on it just so that we're able to grade it and make sure everyone's doing, roughly the same amount of work for the final. But this time really is for you to create something that you've been wanting to make since you started this class. Maybe today you already know what you want your final project to be. That's perfect. We want you to be able to do that by the end of this. The primary methods of instruction are going to be lectures, homeworks, and labs. So again, lectures, what you're at today, you're going to be here every Tuesday, 7 to 8:30 p.m., whether it's online or in person. Each lecture is going to teach you various Figma mechanics and also elements of design theory. These are going to change every week, and we're going to build on the concepts that we talked about in previous weeks. Each lecture is also going to have a brief attendance form that we filled out earlier that you can be following along with right now if you'd like. These are due Thursday so that you're able to watch the content before labs. And live attendance is not necessarily mandatory because we do record all of the lectures, but we do highly encourage you to come to live lab. For those of you watching today, thank you so much. But yeah, that's basically how we're going to be having lecture every single Tuesday, besides for our break week. Homeworks are going to be released directly following lecture, so within the hour after lecture, they'll be posted on our Figma community page at Figma Decal, so anybody taking the class, whether they're auditing it or enrolled, is going to have access to that. Every homework has two parts. You're going to have a reading set and a file that you're going to work on. The reading set is just going to be a few short readings from around the internet and that we find really important to learning design skills. They have a few short response questions, nothing super intense, no essays in this class, we promise, but basically a little bit of a way to make sure that you're engaging with the content. The files are more probably what you're thinking of when we talk about homework. We're going to make a starter file that you can duplicate, and then from that starter, work on whatever you want to make. For example, this week's first assignment is a trading card. Homework is due at 6 p.m. the following Tuesday before lecture, so that is 1 hour before lecture starts, just so we have that buffer time, and they're always submitted through B courses. Students who are enrolled right now, the B courses is still being set up, but we'll have it all finalized by tomorrow, no later. We just had an administrative holiday this week, so it's been a little bit difficult. But that's homework, again, two parts, readings and files. Now finally, labs are going to be every single Thursday, either 9 to 10 a.m. or 7 to 8 p.m., and then either in person or on Zoom. You're going to find out tonight what your preliminary assignment is and then have a day to let us know if you have any conflicts, and then we'll be starting the lab on Thursday. As a heads up to enrolled students, all labs this Thursday will be remote just for scheduling reasons and for booking rooms and everything, but you can expect your in-person lab, if you are in person, to start next week. All of these labs are going to be held with one of our lovely TAs and a team of I caught them off guard, 4 to 5 other students. We're going to be collaborating with them every single week. So you're going to walk through those labs together every week, get to know the other people. We don't really have a lot of group projects or anything that really relies on having to communicate because we had virtual semester. It was a little bit difficult to coordinate group projects, but you are going to be able to do things like critique. You're going to be able to learn with them throughout the whole semester. So you get to know those students in your team and the TA that you're working with. Each of the labs basically practices hands-on skills that we talk about. So for example, this week's lab is going to examine the selection tool and navigation, really key things to make sure you get those feelings of the keyboard under your belt so that you're able to use them for the rest of the semester. And again, we're offering both in-person and virtual based on whatever you submitted on the application. If you have any changes to that, let us know immediately. Office hours are going to be held 3 times a week. It's going to be Mondays 5 to 6, Tuesdays 5 to 6, and Fridays 1 to 2 p.m. All of the office hours are going to have around 2, maybe more staff members at each session. All office hours are also going to be held virtually on Zoom just to make things easier, and they are open to anybody regardless of if you're enrolled or not. Enrolled students are going to get priority if a lot of people come, but historically not a ton of people have come, so please come. It'll be a really good time to get one-on-one help, especially if you're working on your homework. We're more than happy to help you troubleshoot things, to help you figure out how things are working. Platform logistics. This is the super fun part. So if you're an enrolled student, there are kind of 3 or 4 platforms that you can pay attention to, but once our B courses is up and running, you are going to be able to just use B courses if you'd like. But first, B courses is going to be the place that you access and submit all of your assignments. That's all of the homeworks and all of the projects. When it comes to labs, you're going to be meeting with your TAs in person or online anyway, so they'll be supplying that content for you as well. Anything that's basically related to grades is going to happen via B courses, and we'll also cross-post all announcements and information to B courses as well. Our Figma community is where all of our content is posted. You can go directly to that link, or you can get the link through B courses, but you should have received an invite to our fall 2021 Workspace. That's where you're going to be working with your lab TAs every single week if you're an enrolled student. Our Slack, which I believe everybody is on by now, is where we're going to have course communications. So that's formal communications that are announcements to, come to lecture, come to lab, and just casual things, getting to know each other, sending your welcome messages. We all want Slack to be a community, a place that you can meet with other designers, that you can meet with other students. Everyone in that space joined the space because they wanted to learn. So we hope that you're able to use it as a resource and to engage with other students, in your downtime. Now, finally, Twitch. If you would like to watch these streams online, you are able to watch them on twitch.tv. They're always going to be streamed here. Thank you again for bearing with the technical difficulties, and we'll be doing this every single week, hopefully streamlining it more and more as the semester goes on. These recordings are also going to be archived on our website, so if you ever have to miss a class for any reason, the recording's always going to be there for you. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is a lot of platforms, and we heard feedback from last semester that it can be a little bit overwhelming. So we're going to be cross-posting things as much as possible, so that if you want, you can just use B courses as the primary method of accessing information about the class. All of the assignments are going to be there. All of the streaming links are going to be there. All information about where we are physically is going to be there. But we do really want you to treat Slack as a community if it's something that you're able to do. We hope that you follow us on Figma to access all of our files. For auditing students, really quick, I'm going to run through the platforms that you're going to be using. You won't have access to B courses, so you don't have to worry about any of that, but you will be able to use the Figma community, the Slack, and the Twitch. And then for anything else that you would normally find on B courses, you can use our course site at bit.ly/Figma Decal. So this is where you can find homework links, all of the readings, all of the lecture recordings, and general information about the course. So with that, any questions about the logistics of the class before we hop right into how to actually use Figma? Any questions in the chat? Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Now we're in the fun part. If you have any course logistics questions, you can always ask them later to me, Elizabeth, or any other TA. But first, we're going to get into the workspace and navigation of Figma. So at this time, if you do have Figma on your computer right now, I would encourage you to just pull up a file if you want to play around with it. That's kind of the beauty of this class. But we are going to do a little bit of an interactive component later. But following around is probably going to be the easiest way to get these tools under your belt. So getting started with navigation basically means 2 particular skills. The first is panning and zooming. Really good news for you if you've ever used any other kind of design tool, a lot of this is going to be pretty similar. So with panning, that's just any kind of movement, left, right, up, down, diagonal across your canvas. So you can do 3 main things. First, if you have a trackpad, especially a Mac trackpad, you can just use your 2 fingers to pan around the screen however you want. It's going to be pretty familiar to you, the same idea as scrolling on any kind of web page. Otherwise, you can also, especially if you're using a mouse, hold space and then click and drag. Or you can also use the hand tool that's on Figma itself, then click and drag. To get to the hand tool, you can click the hand icon in the toolbar or just press the letter H. It'll put you on the hand tool. Holding space is a really convenient trick, especially if you're using other tools, because it means that you don't let go of the other tool and can really quickly pan around the screen. Now, zooming is magnifying the canvas in any way, basically moving in and out, moving closer and further away from the content. You can do this by using trackpad pinching with 2 fingers, like with any other kind of iPad or tablet. You can use Control and Command and then scroll your mouse wheel, or you can use the Z tool. Z is the magnifying glass zoom tool. So with Z, you can click once to zoom in just a static amount, or you can click and drag, and it's going to actually show you the space that you've dragged onto. This is a lot of things, so we are going to be practicing them in lab this week, but get comfortable with what you think is the most easy for you to do. For a lot of people, that's going to be the trackpad, just pinching and panning. For some people, it's going to be the mouse movements. Finally, if you want to just zoom in a static amount, you can do the plus and minus buttons on your keyboard just to kind of pop in and out really quickly. And the workspace is split into 4 main components. Whenever you're working in Figma, you're going to see the 2 sidebars, the toolbar, and the canvas. So the canvas, again, is going to be that space right in the middle. It's the entire open space you have to basically view what you're working on and do that work. Any kind of tools that you're going to be using are only going to be valid when you're on the canvas. And you can hide those sidebars like you see in the screenshot by hitting Control Command and then the backslash or forward slash, unless you don't know which one it is. But you tap that, you'll see that all the sidebars are going to go away and then come right back. Another way to do that is just to right-click or control-click on your canvas when on nothing and click the option to show or hide the UI. This is really helpful if you need to take a nice screenshot of your work and send it to somebody and you don't want all the, all the layers and things going on in there. And generally helpful if you want to view your whole screen, especially if you have a small screen. The left sidebar contains 2 main panels. First is the layers panel and second is the assets panel. The layers panel is typically what you're going to have open probably around 90–95% of the time. It has 2 main sections, the pages, which show all the workspaces in a file. So a page is just kind of one sheet on the file. You can imagine it as a separate workspace for any kind of content. So if you were to say have this lecture in one sheet, which we actually do, this lecture is going to be in one file. You see here that we have the lecture slides on one page, and we have the thumbnail on another page hidden away so it doesn't distract us. You can do this with any kind of file. You can have as many pages as you want. You can organize it however you feel. Now, on the other hand, we have the layers. The layers are going to be all of those like hashtags, all of those dots, all of those text icons. They show any kind of frame, group, or object, including components, text, shapes, that's on your page right now. You can rename a layer by clicking on it, right-clicking on it and clicking rename, or using Control or Command R, and you can actually batch rename stuff. So if you wanted to say, make a whole bunch of rectangles and call all of them rectangle gray, you can do that all at the same time by doing Control or Command R. The assets panel that's also on the left sidebar, you might see it grayed out at the top right now, is for managing components, which we're going to introduce in week 3 of the course. Don't worry right now if that doesn't make any sense to you. We're going to be going into depth about what a component is. This is going to show 3 different sections. It's going to say local components, which are ones that are introduced in the file, so components that you create when you're in that particular file. It's going to have used in this file, so any kind of component that you've used, whether you've taken it from another file or this one, and then libraries. So libraries is something we're going to dive into week 3, so don't worry about it too much yet, but you can kind of guess a library is shared components. So really quick, I'll just jump right here and show you what those all look like. So with the pages, again, we have thumbnail and we have lecture slides. And if I want to click here, I see that there's all these different pound signs that show all the different frames, which we'll get into in just a second. If I wanted to zoom in here and take a look at this agenda, I see that I have the word introduction. That's going to be one text layer that has placeholder text right now, but all of these different pieces of text you see when I hover over them are different layers, so they're all different kinds of objects. Now going back to the slides, we'll talk about the right sidebar. This is the design panel. This is where you're going to see all of the information that's associated with whatever you have selected right now. So in this example, I'm selecting this rectangle, and we'll walk through what the properties of the rectangle are. At the very top, you see those kind of 2 bars with different alignments. It's going to let me lock it to the left, lock it to the right, lock it to the middle. Super helpful if you're working on kind of a grid system or you're working on UI. Position and sizing, it's kind of where it's placed on the canvas or where it's placed within its own frame, and then the size of it, the width and the height, which you should be familiar with, just as general size words. You can also have the angle of rotation and the corner radius, which is the amount that the corners are curved. Right now you see that the corner radius is 0 because these are sharp corners. The layer shows the layer opacity and the blend modes. By default, it's going to show pass through and be 100%. If I wanted to be kind of see-through, I could set it to be 60%. If I want to do really funky things, I could set it to different blend modes like multiply, dodge, overlay. If you've ever done digital art, you might be familiar with those words. If you're not, you're going to understand what it looks like once you try it. But basically, this is where you set those particular properties. The fill and the stroke are basically the inside color and the outline color. Here, the inside color is red. It's FF2B15, and it is at 100% opacity. And the stroke here is black and set to a style, which we'll talk about next week. And it's 14 pixels wide and aligned to the center. So as you can see here, this blue line is at the center of the black stroke. You can also set it to inside or to outside, depending on what you're working on. Effects are going to be different kinds of visual effects like shadows, like inner shadows, drop shadows, blurs, that kind of thing that you can see a lot on different UI. So you're going to see a lot of things just have a little bit of a shadow on them. This is an easy way to add them. I spent a really long time trying to think of a word that wasn't effects, so I went to write effects twice in that line. I could not think of one. And finally, the export panel is going to be really helpful whenever you have to save something locally onto your computer. So here you can save a layer, you can save a frame, you can save a ton of different things and export them really quickly as a PNG, JPEG, SVG, or PDF, whatever works best for you. The right sidebar also has 2 additional panels. You were going to be talking about the prototyping panel later in the course, but this is where you add interaction. So prototyping basically means that you're going to take the content that's on your page and have it interact with each other and then see what it's going to look like, kind of a mock-up of what it's going to do when you want to interact with it. The inspect panel is going to be primarily helpful if your design is going to be coded in some way. It's going to show you a lot of really quick information, like really quick, the width, height, top left of this piece of layer, whatever it is that you have going on. And it also shows various snippets of code depending on what the item you have selected is. Now the toolbar is going to be where all of the tools live. It's pretty sparse, honestly. There's just a few powerful tools in Figma, which is why it's one of my favorite tools. A lot of different design tools have just a lot of icons going on. With Figma, you really just have these 7. Should have counted them earlier. We'll cover the details of all of these tools over the next couple of weeks, but today we're going to talk about the selection tool, frames, shapes, text, and the hand. So we'll be holding off on this tool and on this tool. A recent thing that they've actually added to the toolbar is audio. So this actually came out literally less than a week ago. With this feature and a couple of other different things, Figma is making collaboration a lot easier. So as you can guess, getting into an audio part of a file means that you can listen in with anybody else that's on the file with you. So they can hop in, click on the headphones with you, and then you'll be able to talk to each other. If you don't see it on your screen, it might be because you're not in an organization. These currently might only show up in like professional plans or education plans or within a team. If you have a solo file, it might not show up for you, but it should show up anytime you're in a lab file that we're working on. Figma also recently released FigJam. So FigJam is a secondary tool to Figma. We'll be talking about it more in week 6, but basically it's a lightweight collaboration tool to help you do things like brainstorming, to help you do things like basically getting your ideas out there really quickly. Again, we're going to talk about it more later when we talk about collaboration, how to work with other people. But feel free to explore it on your own. This is actually a screenshot of our first meeting with the entire staff. It's a really fun way to just engage with other people. And finally, one more thing about this whole set of new features is cursor chat. So there's actually a very cool new communication feature that works in both FigJam and Figma that you can test on your computer by pressing /. It shows up a little text bubble next to your cursor and allows you to actually say things to other people in your file without it being like a piece of text or a layer on your screen. So it's a really quick way just to talk to somebody else that you happen to see on your file without actually messing with your content. And also, we're going to demo this. I'm just super excited about this. You can now high-five people in FigJam. So I got all the TAs to join me on this FigJam file. You can actually wave your hand around and high-five people. No one on the file is mind broken. Oh, there you are. It is so laggy, but you get the idea. You can high-five people now. It is really fun. Awesome. That's all. I just really wanted to show that. Thank you, TAs, for bearing with me. I made a really big deal about getting their computers ready for them to do that. But yeah, any questions about anything we just talked about before we move on to that first set and the suite of tools? Awesome. Okay, after the selection tool, we're going to have like a really quick break just because I know this is a lot of content. Just a second to stretch and get some water for like 2 minutes. So a selection tool is the very first item that you're going to be working with, and it's probably what was already selected when you opened the file. So as you might have guessed, you use the selection tool to select and move layers. You access it through the cursor icon in the toolbar or by using the shortcut V. So whenever you use another tool and you want to quickly get back to the selection tool, just press V. You can see what is or will be selected through this blue box. You're going to see it a lot in any kind of Figma branding and also just in Figma itself. But this blue box appears whenever you hover or click on an object. Grouping is really important in Figma. You're going to be having a lot of files. As we saw earlier, just that one piece of text with its own layer and all of the other pieces of text with their own layers too. So sometimes you don't want to have to interact with 3,000 things on your file at the same time. So you are going to have to group things. And good news, if you ever use Google Slides has grouping. It works exactly the same way. So to use a group, you're basically going to select multiple objects and then either right-click and group it, or use Control or Command G. You can ungroup it by then doing Control Shift G, or right-clicking again. You can select multiple layers in order to make a group, and you can do this in one of 3 ways. The first is holding Shift as you click on multiple objects. So if you click on, one rectangle, hold Shift, click on another, they're both going to be selected. You can also click and drag, like you see in this GIF right now. All of those pieces of the ice cream cone are selected just at once, or you can just click them in the Layers panel. So I'm going to let this GIF run again. On the left side, you're going to see me select the eye, select the other eye, select the smile, and then select the circle. And then I'm going to group them by right-clicking and select group. That's the easiest way to make that circle, that smile, one basically object. On the left side, you're going to see me use the marquee, where I just click and then I drag and select all of those, the 3 circles and the triangle, and then I group them so they can interact as one object. Now, nested layers occur whenever you have groups or you have frames. So when I did that earlier, that whole face became one object, but sometimes I just want to interact with one part of the object. So with the nesting layers, there's basically 3 ways to select them. The first is to just double click, just keep on clicking until you get to that layer that you want. This is honestly the easiest thing to do, but there's also one other trick. You can do a deep select. So while holding Control or Command while you select something, you can basically go all the way down to the bottom part of the hierarchy. So that's going to select one single layer, even if it's within a group. So on the left side, you're going to see that I double click into that ice cream cone to get to that one white circle. And on the right, you're going to see that I'm deep selecting. So whenever I hover, it's going to show each individual object, even if I haven't clicked yet. The final way to do this is just to open up the Layers panel and go directly to the layer that you want and just select it there. Now, horizontal and vertical movement is, one question? So what's the difference between things that are on top of each other aren't going to be treated as like one object. Nested layers means that they're basically grouped within each other. So I'll do a really quick example here. If I just have this rectangle or this square, and I say I want to make it a red square, and then I have a blue square, even if they're on top of each other, they're not going to be one item. So I can still select the red square by just hovering over that part of it. If I do hover over this intersected area, it's going to select the blue square. Let me make it a different color so it's easier to see the outline. So when I hover over this middle part, it's going to select whatever's on top by default. Even if I click Control, it's only going to register like the topmost item. But the nice part about nesting is that if I group these, so I select both, I group it by right-clicking. It is so laggy. Now when I want to select it, it's going to be one object. But if I want to select just the green, I can do Control. And if I want to select just red, I can do Control. Or I can just double click into it. Make sense? Yeah, so you see right here that you have group 32 here, and you'll have rectangle 127 and rectangle 126. So there's still separate layers that you can interact with separately, but they're treated as one object on kind of the top of the working space. Yeah, totally. Now, horizontal and vertical movement are super helpful when you ever have to just nudge something over a little bit and you don't want it to be all diagonal and moved out of place. So a lot of the time it's already going to be aligned vertically or it's already going to be aligned horizontally, and you don't want to mess with both of them. So to do this, you're just going to hold Shift whenever you move something. This actually works the same way in Google Slides too. So if you're ever using Google Slides, you'll go do the same trick. So this basically moves it in whatever direction you're going and the closest sense. So if you move it diagonally while holding Shift, it'll just do whatever you're doing more of, whether you're doing more horizontal or more vertical. A small arrow is also going to show up on the cursor to indicate the direction. It's going to be a small arrow that does this or a small arrow that does this. Now, duplicating layers is going to also be really useful, especially for UI where you just have, a lot of buttons going on or a lot of pieces of text going on. So there's 3 ways to make a copy of the layers that you have selected. First is just your standard copy-paste, Control-Command-C, Control-Command-V. You can also duplicate in place by doing Control-Command-D, but the coolest way by far is just to use Alt or Option while you're dragging something out. So here I've clicked on this set of items, and I'm holding Alt and Option while I'm dragging them out, so it automatically makes a duplication of anything I have selected, no matter how big it is. This is going to be the just easiest and fastest by far So get used to doing that particular shortcut with Alt or Option. Measurement and alignment guides are going to show up a lot as well. As you're working, you're probably going to see a whole bunch of red lines just everywhere. These are there to help you basically figure out if stuff is, centered, if it's all aligned on the edge, if everything is making sense and not just 1 pixel off, not just 2 pixels off. Alignment guides show up automatically once you place things in a frame together or place them next to each other. But these measurement guides with numbers are going to pop up when you hold Alt or Option and you hover. So if I want to see how far away this big smiley face is from other stuff, I can hold Alt and Option and hover over something else. So I'll let the GIF loop one more time. Once it gets there, I'm going to basically select the big smiley and then hover over something else. So I select a big one, I hover over that ice cream, hover over that frame, hover over the circle. All those tiny rectangles actually have numbers in them to show you the number of pixels away something is. So popping into this really quick, I'm going to ungroup that. And this rectangle, I'm going to put it right here. When I select this, I can hold Alt and hover over that. It's 567 pixels away. I can say that this frame is now 852 pixels away. Super helpful, especially if you're doing kind of things like base 8 scaling, which base 8 spacing, which we're going to talk about in another lecture soon. Now the last few things, scaling, rotating, and flipping, again, really, really similar to Google Slides. To resize an object, you select something and grab the corner of it and drag it. You might already be familiar with this if you ever had to resize or crop a photo on your phone. If you want to preserve the proportions of that particular shape, like you don't want your image to distort, you don't want your circle to become an oval, you basically just hold Shift. So you can think of holding Shift as just a way to maintain ratios, maintain any kind of perfect settings that you have as it is right now. You can also use K to select the scale tool, which is going to automatically resize without having any distortion. To rotate an object, you select it and hover near the corner. The rotate arrow is going to appear, and then you can click and drag. And again, holding Shift is going to help you. It's going to help you rotate in increments of 15 degrees. Now finally, to flip an object horizontally or vertically, I always mention this trick because I use it all the time. You can do Shift H or Shift V to flip it really quickly. I just use that a lot whenever I do illustrations, so I find it a really helpful thing to do. So really quick, just so we can see that. With the circle, square, I know my shapes. I'm going to grab the corner of it and just change the size of it, but all of a sudden when I press Shift, it's going to be a perfect square again. That's going to be maintained no matter what it is. To rotate it, I get really close to the corner and I grab it when the icon becomes kind of a curved arrow, click and turn it. And if I hold Shift, it's going to go in increments of 15 really nicely to get those degrees that I want. And finally, if I want to flip it, I'll make it a rectangle so you can tell. You can do Shift H. Obviously, you can't tell. You can't tell with that. I'm going to turn it on its side so you can tell. Shift H, you can see it flipping, and then Shift V, it's going to flip the same way because it's a rectangle. Yeah, awesome. Basically, I threw a bunch of words at you. I said a lot of shortcuts. It is totally okay if you don't remember any of them. Basically, whenever you're working with Figma on the selection tool, if you press Shift, Control Command, or Alt Option, you're probably going to rediscover all of these different things. And if you can't figure them out, they're a quick Google away. You can find them all in the Figma docs. But basically, rediscover these tricks as you go. There's probably more tricks that I did not tell you about that I don't even know. It's going to help you a lot in just doing basic design work. So with that, we are going to take a really quick break before we get into the next part, mostly because I desperately need to drink some water. So we'll just come back at 7:53. Feel free to stretch, drink water just for a moment before we get started again. Anyone in the chat, you can attend to any questions if you have. All right, it's been about 2 minutes, so we're gonna go ahead and get started again. Hope everyone is refreshed and ready to get through these last couple of slides. So frame text and shapes are gonna be the keys to your designs in Figma. Basically everything you see is made of these 3 tools. There's really not that many things going on. So frames are kind of like one exportable area. If you've ever used Adobe Illustrator, the direct analog is going to be artboards. If you've ever used Word, which you probably have, you can kind of think of it as one page. Whenever you print out a Word document, all of the words that are on a single page are going to be on that physical page. Same idea, it's a container. So anything that's going to be in a single frame in Figma is going to be exported like that. It's containing all of those particular objects. Now frames are always going to be indicated by the pound sign icon, and the shortcuts are either A or F, whatever strikes your fancy. And all the frames have gray names in the top left. That's the easiest way to differentiate something, to see if it's a layer or if it's a frame. So really quickly, as you see here, this doesn't have a gray name in the top left. This doesn't have a gray name in the top left. But this one, this agenda file, this agenda frame does. And you can tell it's a frame because of that. When I click on it, you see there is a pound sign showing that it's a frame. And it's a container for all of these different objects that I can actually collapse, so it's a little bit easier to navigate the sidebar. There's 3 main ways to make those frames whenever you're on the A or the F tool. The first is to click and drag. This is the easiest thing to do. You just figure out how big you want your particular frame to be, and if you want a square, you can hold shift while you drag it. You can also click once. It's going to make a 100 by 100 pixel frame by default, and then in the right sidebar where you see the size and the position, you can just set the size that you want. And one of the most convenient ways that you can make a frame is by just getting on the tool, again, pressing A or pressing F or clicking it in the toolbar, and then going to that right sidebar and seeing all of the different sizes it has by default. So you're going to see that it has different phone sizes. So if you want to design for an iPhone 11, you can do that. If you want to design for a MacBook Air, you can do that. If you want to design for an Apple Watch, you can do that too. You can also get all of the paper sizes that you need, social media things, and also basic templates for publishing on Figma community. Frames can also be nested. So like we talked about earlier with groups, nesting is the idea of having items that are contained within each other. This is going to happen sometimes with frames. So this containment within another frame is going to happen, especially in UI UX work. So if you think about different kinds of tools that have maybe internal scrolling, like if you're on Yelp and you want to scroll between like one map, that might be a nested frame because it's a scrollable area within another larger one. Text is pretty straightforward. Again, super similar to Google Slides. It's basically any kind of text box, and there's a couple of main properties that are really special to Figma that we're going to talk about. It's always indicated by the T icon, both as the tool and in the left sidebar. The tool shortcut is always going to be T, so easy to remember. Text has 2 T's in it. It starts with a T. That's the easiest way to access any kind of text. So the main properties are going to be similar to anything else that you've seen. The font, the formatting, bold, italic, regular, all that's going to be standard. Any shortcuts that you use, like Control B, Control I, are also going to be working. Font size, spacing and tracking are the spacing both vertically and horizontally between text. For the most part, you might leave this standard, but sometimes you might need to change this. Now, the text box is actually one of the most fun things about text in Figma that I really enjoy that I'll demo really quickly. If I want to have a bunch of text, there's a couple of ways that you want to format it. So let's say that, by default, I want my text to just keep going to the right as I type it. So when I'm typing, I'll just key smash, it's going to keep going to the right forever. But if I'm on a particular screen in, say, a phone, I don't want it to go off the edge of the phone. So what I'm going to do is set the width to be a hard maximum, and then it's actually going to resize vertically as I start typing. So as you can see, it's going to resize like that. That tool is actually going to be these particular buttons. So you can see here, that goes auto width. It's going to keep expanding the width forever. Auto height is going to have a set width and keep expanding the height forever. And the last one, a standard fixed size, means that it's not going to change the size of the text box. And if I keep typing, it's going to maintain and basically resize vertically as it sees fit. The alignment, the text box, and the fill and stroke are going to be some of the tools that you might use a lot. You probably aren't going to have stroked text very often. You don't really see text with an outline on it. It's not very readable, but if you ever want to add it, you can do that. But otherwise, the fill is just the color of the text. And alignment is going to be helpful, again, like Google Slides, left, middle, right, top, middle, bottom. Now, something to keep in mind is that Figma does not have built-in spell check. Maybe one day it will. Currently, there's a couple plugins you can download to help you with spell checking, but just be very careful. Make sure there's no typos. But it does now have numbered and bulleted lists, and we're going to make a big deal about this because last semester it didn't. We had to change all the slides to have real bullets, and actually Annie made her own bullets last semester because she was so tired of it. But now they have an update, so you can use bullets. You can just do the traditional dash space, the asterisk space, or 1 period space to get any of those numbered and bulleted lists. All of the text for this slide is gone, and I don't know why, but shapes are going to be a really important part of your Figma tools. Let me see if they're still here and they just got deleted somehow. But there are 2 main shapes that you're going to be wanting to work with. Wow, that's just gone. Awesome. Well, that's okay. You're going to see here that I'm making a square on the top and a circle on the bottom through a couple of different methods. The square is going to be the shortcut R for rectangle. Rectangles are going to be, again, basically the core part of most of your designs. To make a perfect square as opposed to just a regular rectangle, you're going to be holding Shift while you drag it out. So like with the frames, you're just going to go on the tool, so press R or go to the square icon in the toolbar, and then click and drag to make the shape that you want in whatever size that you want. Click once to get a 100 by 100 pixel grid, or again, hold Shift if you want that perfect square. For the circle, the shortcut is going to be O. You can remember that for oval. You can remember it for it's shaped like a circle, but that's the ellipse tool actually. So to make an ellipse, same idea. Click and drag to make an ellipse, or click once to get 100 by 100 pixels. And then hold Shift if you want to resize it into a perfect circle. Fill, stroke, and effect are all of the colors, all the fun stuff to make your squares no longer the hex code C4, 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 which is the standard gray that they're going to be using. But shapes have a variety of basic properties that we saw earlier with that design panel when I walked through that red and black rectangle. So with shapes, you can have the fill, the interior color, the stroke, which is the outside, the outline color, and then things like drop shadows, blurs, that sort of thing with the effects. We're going to talk more about how to actually navigate this color picker more carefully and talk about color theory next week. But here's at a glance just me going through the process of making a square and making it look a little bit cooler. So the GIF's going to repeat in just a second. I'm going to use the rectangle tool to basically make a square initially. I'm taking my sweet time here. Yeah, so I have rectangle tool. I'm making the fill a pink, and then I'm changing it to a more lavender color. Yep, and then I'm going to add a stroke to it. By default, it's going to be a 1 pixel black stroke, but I want it to be a little bit thicker. And then I add a drop shadow. You can just see it just barely at the bottom. And I'm going to make it move out to the right, move out to the bottom, and then blur a little bit more. Now, image fills are also a really huge part of Figma. So you're going to be basically putting an image inside of whatever shape that you want. So there's 2 main easy ways to do this. The first is by doing Command-Shift-K. This is going to be a big lifesaver if you ever have to use a lot of images in a file. That's going to open up your image selector in your computer or file selector in your computer, and you can directly click on a shape and have it autofill immediately. You can also just go from another tab, do Control-C, and then go into your file and do Command-V. If you're grabbing it from the internet or you're grabbing it from another file. And the last thing you can do is just through the menu, there's going to be an option to do an image fill as well. Smart shapes are something super unique to Figma and super, super fun to play with. So basically, it has these shapes with different features that you can mess with in different ways, basically. Like with this, you have a star that becomes this 3-headed star or this crazy shape. And it can have different kinds of pointiness, different numbers of sides and everything like that. So with here, I'm making a star, and you see these tiny white circles pop up. It's going to be easier to see on your own screen, but these anchors I can adjust. So this is the pointiness, this is the kind of radius, and that last one's going to adjust the number of spokes that this particular star has. So I'm showing it with a star, but this shows up also on squares and rectangles. It's going to have the option to curve the corners to get a really nice round shape. On circles, you're going to be able to make arcs. You're going to be able to make pie charts super easily. It's just a really fun thing to play with. I'm actually going to show you the circle options right now because it took me a very long time to get to them. So with the circle, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to press O. And if you see, the shape tool is actually just one single tool. It has a drop down. So if you click the drop down, you can access rectangles, lines, arrows, ellipses, polygons, stars, or images. So in this case, I want to make a rectangle. I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to drag it out. Just any shape, then hold shift so that it's a perfect circle. And with this, I'm actually going to see this bar come up. This is the arc option. So with this, I can just start to make it like a Pac-Man. I have a Pac-Man shape now. Let's actually rotate it so it is Pac-Man and make it yellow. One other thing I can manage is the radius, not just the standard radius, but kind of a empty circle. So if I pull it from here, the ratio is actually going to change, and now I can make this really easy arc. It's going to be super helpful if you ever need to make a chart. You'll never go back to freaking Google Slides ever again, but that's a really easy way to play with these shapes, the smart shapes, particularly with the circle. Any questions so far about frames, text, shapes, any of that? Or any of the other tools that we've talked about? Yep. I believe that smart shapes are Figma unique. I'll be honest, I haven't used anything else in a really long time, but I don't think that smart shapes exist in other design software. It's just fun mostly. I think that the closest might be that corner radius. That option might exist in something else, but I don't think these circle options would. By corner radius, again, I keep mentioning this. If I make a rectangle, when I hover over any of the corners, a little circle is going to pop up, and I can just curve it. So this might show up in a lot of other tools just because it's really common in UI. Awesome. Any other questions? Right. So with that, I really want you all to get in the file. So I've made a empty file that we're all actually going to hop in at the same time. For those of you on Twitch, you can only access the file if you're enrolled, but otherwise you can view it. Just go to yellowkey.com/senior, and we're actually going to get to see everyone interacting with this file. So it's going to be right here. You can see everyone popping into the file at the same time. Hopefully no one's computer crashes, but just try to make some shapes, try to write some text, and if you're down here, talk to me with the cursor. Yeah. For those of you on stream, feel free to open up your own file and play with this. We're going to do this for just a couple of minutes so everyone has a chance to try things out and see if anything doesn't work. We'll get back here in just a few minutes. If anyone has any questions, raise your hand. I'm just going to walk around and snoop on your screens. And if you have anything for the TAs, just raise your hand as well. If you don't have edit access, make sure that you went to your email and accepted the invite to the workspace. If you did already, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but we'll probably mess with it the next time. Oh, did y'all all verify your education status? Okay, this might be because the first time I sent the invite, I sent you all the view only, and then I realized it was a mistake. I went back and I edited all of them, so it might just take a little second to kick in. But I think that we can just troubleshoot this at lab. Sorry if you don't get to interact with this. I hope that watching it is okay. Sorry for the FOMO, guys. Oh, can I accept all of you? Oh, awesome. This might take a second, but it should pop up once I click approve for you. While I stall and do this, if anyone wants to keep talking, fun fact, we don't have to pay for any of this. Normally you have to pay quite a lot for this, but because we're students, we don't have to pay for it at all. So sorry about this. I'm glad it worked for some students, but I'll click on everyone and then we'll just take another minute or so. You can also treat this as a time to just drink some water, stand up, and then we'll just get into the last section of the lecture today, which is about what is design. There's some fun shapes going on over here. I'm a fan of this. Okay, everyone should be on the file now, as you can tell by it running extraordinarily slowly. We'll take another minute just to play around with this, and then we will go ahead and keep going. All right, I'm gonna cut off the fun now. It is 8:10, but we're gonna go ahead and keep going with the last part of the slides. But hopefully, you get a little bit of hands-on experience with how to make shapes, how to make text. I see that some of you are really pushing the smart shapes thing to the limit, which I'm happy to see. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get into this last section about what is design, why do we care, what are we learning, and why are we learning it? So what do you all think of when you hear the word design? If people want to just help me out here and shout things, or if anyone in the chat is saying anything, if Tiffany can say them, we're going to add them to the slides. These are official now. But yeah, what do y'all think of when you hear design? Yeah. A lot of choices. That is good. Tia, do you want to help me out? Hadar? Creation. Feel free to not raise your hand. Just yell at me. Creativity. Pretty. That's also super important. Aesthetics are a really big part of making design appealing to people. Or one more, guys. Systems. I heard another one. What was the other one? Accessibility. Yay! Gold star for you. Accessibility is I spelled it wrong, but we're not gonna worry about that. These are all true. These are all correct. Design is a lot of choices. Design is creativity. It's creation. It's pretty. It's accessible, and you have systems. All of these are really core components of design. We're gonna break design down into 4 main kind of tenets. First is problem solving. So the core of a lot of design, when you think about it, especially if you want to think about how to differentiate the words design and art, it's typically that design is identifying problems and finding ways to make solutions that work. So an example that I have here that I fixated on forever is this lamp from Miniso. It's a really simple lamp. It's very small. It's very collapsible. So the key thing about lamps is that you only use it when it's dark out. And if you're in a space that's really small, you have precious, desk space to work with. So as a way to save space, you can collapse this lamp, tuck it into a drawer when it's the daytime and you're not using it. But when it's nighttime, you can pull it out really easily and have a lamp ready to go. Design is also form aesthetic. Like they said, it's pretty. Prettiness is a part of it. Creative communication and expression between different people is a difficult thing to communicate across just different languages, across different experiences. So when you do design something, you want to find a way to make a form that anybody can relate to and anybody can understand quickly at a glance. So an example that I like to meme on a lot, but is genuinely really good, is the Chobani yogurt rebrand. You have these different kind of two main components to it. The first is those watercolor fruits, and the second is that really distinct font. That font is not quite serifed, but it does look a little bit more mature, and it communicates, hey, this is yogurt, it's healthy, it's good for you, it's something that you want to eat. And the fruits that are more playful, that are more fun, are going to say, not only is it healthy, it also tastes good. And so with that, you have this aesthetic that communicates exactly what they want when they're marketing this yogurt to you. Now, a third aspect of design that I find really engaging and interesting is storytelling. So understanding design means that you don't see it as just an object that exists in the vast expanse of space. It exists in a time, it exists in an experience. When you use a design, you're using it, you're seeing it, and you're engaging with it by the nature of it existing. When you see this photograph, you feel something because you're like, hey, what the crap is that? And you want to learn more about the story behind it. So in particular, this is a piece by a food photographer that I really love about Manhattan Meltdown. That's the name of the series, Manhattan Meltdown, that talks about how gentrification is taking over a lot of local restaurants and a lot of local food history in Manhattan. So in particular, this is a kind of sandwich that is popularized by Jewish delis, started by Jewish immigrants. But a lot of gentrification is taking over those deli spaces and turning them into different restaurants, thereby kind of destroying that history and freezing it in time because it's no longer there. Now, finally, what I think is the core, most important part of design is empathy and community. Honestly, if you aren't empathizing with people and if you aren't understanding community, you are not designing something that matters. It is important to think about who you're working with in order to create something that's actually meaningful. And that might be a little bit harsh, but it is kind of the truth. You need to be able to empathize with the community that you're creating with. So this example is from the Center for Urban Pedagogy. It's a series of pamphlets and flyers that they handed out to those in upstate New York, or in the state of New York, about the rights for voting that people who are incarcerated still have and what people can do as friends and family to help those who are incarcerated. Now, with that in mind, you can think of design as literally everything. Every object in this room, everything you have at your home, somebody designed it. Someone sat there and drew the blueprints for it. Someone sat there and figured out how it's going to be made. Anything that is created with purpose, whether that purpose is functional, whether it's aesthetic, anything in between has been designed. If your grandma ever knit you a sweater, she designed that sweater for you. She took your measurements, or she figured out what your favorite color was, and she decided how to make that. If you're a cook at any place, you're designing those meals that you're making. You're making pinpoint decisions on when to do things, when to put something on the stove, when to take it off, how high to turn the heat. All of those decisions that you're making are trying to solve a problem, even if that problem is someone is hungry. So everything that you think about, whether it's making your coffee in the morning, how you're getting to class, start thinking of those as creative ways that you're solving problems, and start thinking of yourself as a designer. Start thinking of everyone as a designer, somebody with the capability to make those decisions. Now, these examples are just some stuff that I think is really well designed. AirPods are a really great example of good design. You can see as so many people have them now really quickly, they caught on, even though a lot of people thought that they would be a little bit weird. Muji pens, if you've ever used a Muji pen, you probably know why. It just feels so good to write with for some reason. Sometimes it's hard to explain, but things feel good. It's important to design things that feel good to use. A lot of other things that you might not think of off the top of your head. Apple slicer. It serves one purpose and does it really well. It's a really important piece of design. The Nintendo Switch, the Animal Crossing one, that sold out immediately because people love the design of it. Crosswalks have to be designed well so that you know not how to not get hit by a car. But tons of things in this room. This water bottle, designed greatly. This hand sanitizer has a pump so that you don't get your hands dirty. This marker has its own system. You can hit them, connect them together so that you can store them really easily. Everything has a lot of purpose behind it once you kind of take a moment and look at it more closely. So again, tons of different kinds of design, and this is kind of why we wanted to not market ourselves as a UI UX course, because that's just a little bit too stifling. There's tons of different things that you can do, from architecture to making the timeless Coca-Cola bottle that everyone can recognize, to making packaging that's so nice you buy it even if you don't care about the product, Service design, thinking about the way that people interact with each other. Why does a fast food drive-through line feel easy to get through? Because somebody decided how that's going to look. You can think about research, you can think about sound and Foley, you can think about type. It really does not end, and you can do a lot of these things in a lot of different ways, but we're hoping you do it in Figma. A few design methodologies that we're going to be talking about throughout the semester are human-centered design, accessibility and universal design, and a little bit of equity-centered community design. So human-centered design is maybe a phrase that you've heard generally. It's talking about creating solutions to challenges that are oriented around human and user needs, rather than things like how the designer feels, how the company feels, how the market reacts. So human-centered design is all about the humans, the users, the people that are actually going to be interacting with that design. Accessibility and universal design are a little bit different, and we're going to talk about them both, but they prioritize accessibility and usability for all people, parentheses, in a target audience without needing special additional adaptations. So thinking about what is the way to make this usable to everyone immediately without having to say like, oh, turn on dark mode, oh, turn on this accessibility feature. How do we make everything as usable as possible to as many people as possible? And finally, a really interesting framework from Creative Reaction Lab, which I really highly recommend you check out, is equity-centered community design. So this focuses on equity, history and healing, how to navigate power dynamics, and community co-creation. It's a really exciting way to think about design in a way that you might not have heard of before, especially if you've worked a lot in corporate design or just thought about design as a tech framework. So what we're going to be learning starting from today and moving onward with the entire class is, again, Figma as a tool for design. So again, primarily a software for UI UX, but as you hopefully can see with these last few slides, we want to be able to use it as a tool that you can apply to anything. Just like any other kind of tool, you don't necessarily have to be pigeonholed into this one topic. Design theory and methods are going to be coming in throughout each lecture following this one to build a foundation to apply those tools to. So we'll talk about theory, like color theory, composition, Gestalt principles, methods, and design justice, things that are really important for a designer to create something that is not only useful, but effective, it's meaningful, it's empathetic, it works well, and it communicates with people. So with that, we are almost at the very end of lecture. Any questions about what we talked about with design? Yep. It's going to be kind of scattered throughout. We're going to be talking about them, and it's going to be something that you get to read into more in the readings, which is why we're hoping that you do them, so that you can kind of learn about them more deeply than with the time we have in lecture. Any other questions? Yep. Creative Reaction Lab is a really cool organization that helps underrepresented people become designers. So it's focused a lot on low-income, first-gen, and Black and Brown students around, I want to say the Bay, but also kind of is a worldwide community of resources for people. They're very cool. Check them out. Any other questions? Awesome. So with that, we are almost at the end of the first lecture. We're just going to do a really quick wrap up, some announcements, and talk about the assignments we have. Figma desktop app is something that we would highly recommend you look into. You don't have to download it. A big reason people like to use Figma is that you can use it fully in the browser, but there are a couple of things that are easier to do on the desktop app. So if you're somebody who likes having separate apps, definitely look into it. You can go to figma.com/downloads to check it out. Our Figma community page is going to be where we post all of our slides, all our homeworks, labs, and all of the community content that we create. And you can either go directly to figma.com/@FigmaDecal to find us, or you can just search for us on the community. We're going to dive more deeply into what we mean when we say the Figma community on week 6. But basically, it's like an internal sharing tool, kind of like Behance or Dribbble or just Instagram, that's hosted entirely for Figma creators around the world. So the first homework, which is going to be released tonight, we're going to try to release it within the next hour, is trading cards. So the homework is going to show up on our community page. Again, our B course is not quite ready, so we're going to share it on Slack as well and in the emails. To start it, we're going to send you to a page on our community where you can then duplicate it. It's going to be a button in the top right corner to duplicate the file, make a copy of it so that you have access to it, and then we know that it's been remixed. This is going to be creating your own trading card that shares some information about you. If you want to see it at the end, I can show all of our staff examples, but they're going to be in the file itself as well. And all homework files are going to be made in the same duplication format. And lab 1 on this Thursday is going to be a playground file. It's basically going to be a set of short activities to help you get really comfortable with navigating, with zooming and panning, and also with the selection tool to make sure that you have all those tools really, really secure before you kind of move on to the rest of the course. And if you are doing the attendance form, the secret word for today is going to be lush, L-U-S-H. That's going to be the word for day. So make sure you put that in. Again, it's lush, L-U-S-H for anybody on the stream. Make sure to put that in if you're doing the attendance form for being enrolled. So yeah, with that, a couple of basic announcements really quick. The homework 1 and the homework 1 readings are going to be posted. Because the B courses is not quite up yet, we're going to extend the reading deadline just 1 day. So it's going to be due next Wednesday, and we're also going to share it on our website. Again, these are going to be up hopefully by the next hour, but technical difficulties may arise, but we'll try for the next hour. Lab 1's on Thursday. You're probably all wondering what lab you're going to be in. I'm going to actually pull it up on the computer right after we stop the stream, so you can come in and check, but we're going to send it on Slack as well. If you have any conflicts, please let us know no later than noon tomorrow. And it might happen that you get switched around because somebody else has conflicts. So we'll confirm everything with you no later than tomorrow so that you're all set for Thursday. You're going to be added to a Slack channel with just your TA and a pinned information about your lab time and location. So make sure that you're in those. And if you're not, DM Elizabeth and I if this hasn't happened by tomorrow. As a heads up, all of the labs are going to be in person or online, and we've assigned you based on whatever you put in your application. If you want to change what you said, or you have decided that you don't want to be in person or anything like that, let us know ASAP. And again, if it's in person, it's going to be in person the whole semester. If it's remote, it's going to be remote the whole semester. Send your welcome in Slack if you haven't already in the welcome channel. I read all of them. I read every single one. I'm super excited to meet you and put names to your faces. So do head over to the welcome channel, check the pinned message for a template and introduce yourself. React to others, make some friends. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to email us. But we prefer that you DM us on Slack. If you're in the Slack, feel free to DM me or Elizabeth with any questions, or send a general question to the Ask channel. But before that, any questions from anybody in the room? Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That is the end of our first lecture. For those of you on stream, bye-bye for now. Sorry I'm showing my stream information, but thank you so much for coming.